Welcome to Recovery for Runners by Tom Goom at the Physio Rooms. Don't forget to download your free recovery guide using the link provided in the title. Hi, I'm Tom from the Physio Rooms, and today we're going to be talking about recovery, which is a really important topic for runners, particularly as I know lots of you fellow runners out there will be training hard for the spring marathons that are coming up in Brighton, Paris, and of course London. Now, during your training, I'm sure you'll all be focusing on building up those miles, trying to get that fitness up. And that's the right thing to do. And a lot of us put a lot of energy into planning our programs. And certainly I've done that myself in the past, poured over the program to get the best possible schedule in place. But often there's one important thing that we forget that's probably just as important as the training schedule itself, and that's how we recover from our training. So today we're going to do a short video talking about 4 key areas in recovery. So first up, we're going to talk about the balance between training, stress and recovery. And then we're going to talk about planning your recovery into the schedule. And then we'll talk about sleep and finally nutrition. So hopefully we'll give you some simple, useful tips that you can take away and apply straight away in your training to improve your performance, reduce your fatigue levels, and also reduce your risk of getting an injury. So first up on our list is this concept of a stress recovery balance. Now, what that is trying to achieve a balance between the stress we put ourselves through, both training stress and emotional stress, and the recovery we do to cope with it. Now, typically, as our training increases and we're placing our body under more stress, we actually need to increase our recovery to cope with that. But often we do the opposite. We try to squeeze in more runs and our recovery time gets less. And we really need to try and make sure that if we're increasing our training, we also need to increase our recovery strategies to cope with that training. It's also really important when we're trying to strike a balance between stress and recovery that we recognize that it isn't just physical stress from training that's important, it's also emotional stress that has a big role in our training and our recovery and also our performance. So if you're under more emotional stress, if you're very busy at work, if you're stressed, you've got lots going on with your family, then's the time really again to increase your recovery from that, to allow yourself to cope with that emotional stress. So that's the first point I'd like to take away. Have a think about the physical stresses that you have from training and maybe other sports you do in your life, and the emotional stresses that you may have as part of your life as well, and think how you might increase your recovery time to cope with that. Now, I think we're all familiar with recovery as an idea for physical stress, but also it's important for emotional stress too. Now, within our team at the Physio Rooms here, we have Sally Davis, who is brilliant with the emotional stress side of things. You can speak to her about mindfulness work and well-being coaching, and she can help you manage some of the emotional stress that might come with training. And we'll talk to you about how to modify your training itself to reduce some of the physical stress so that you're less likely to get fatigued and less likely to get injured. Okay, so that's the first tip. Try and strike a balance between stress and recovery. Second tip is to really plan your recovery. Plan it into your training in the same way that you plan your training. So hopefully, as you're putting together a training plan for Brighton Marathon or whatever it is that you're training for, you're thinking about the structure of a week and what you're going to be doing within each of those days of the week. And hopefully you're also thinking about a larger structure like what you're going to be doing within the next 3 or 4 weeks and how the training might unfold over your typical sort of 16 to 18 week marathon training program. And those are the right things to do. We want to plan our training. It shouldn't be something that just happens. We want to plan it to get the best in terms of performance and to reduce our injury risk. And we do the same with recovery. So within your week, think, when do you need those recovery days? Typically they're after your hardest sessions and your longest sessions. So if, like me, you like to do your long, slow run on the Sunday, you may need to pop in a recovery day on the Monday to allow yourself to actually adapt and cope with that long, slow run. If you like to do a speed session on a Tuesday night, perhaps Wednesday's a day to be doing some recovery work. And on those days, it doesn't mean you've got to completely take to your bed and do nothing, but it's thinking about recovery strategies, maybe some light, easy exercise, going out for a walk with friends or family, really thinking about making sure you get enough sleep, you get the right kind of fuel on board, and we'll talk about that in a bit more detail. So we can plan that short-term recovery, and that's really useful, but we can also be thinking in the more medium term as well. So think maybe about having a recovery week roughly every 4th week in your training schedule. Now, a recovery week often involves reducing the training volume, so how much you're doing, but maintaining some of that intensity that you need. And in that way, by reducing the training volume, you're able to reduce the fatigue, but by maintaining the intensity, you're able to keep the performance levels that you want. So perhaps schedule in that recovery week roughly every 4th week to keep yourself fresh and reduce those fatigue levels. Now, again, if you're planning, you think beyond that, you can think about what's going to happen as you approach the marathon or the race that you're doing. And that's where something like a taper period is going to come in really useful. So typically for a marathon, we might look at around about a 3-week taper period. And during that time, again, you're going to reduce that training volume and maintain the intensity to keep that fitness. And actually, tapers can improve performance, in some cases by as much as 5% in the research. So don't see the taper as a kind of inconvenient thing at the end of your training program that means you've got to reduce your running. It's actually going to help make sure that you're fit and fresh for the race day that you're preparing for. So embrace your taper and resist the temptation to squeeze more runs in during that period, because actually really it's about reducing the fatigue and being ready for the race. Okay, so that's planning, and if you get that planning in there, make recovery part of your schedule, it's going to help you strike that balance that we've talked about between stress and recovery. Number 3 on our list of things we'd like to talk about today is probably one of the simplest but most important recovery strategies that you have, and that is sleep. Now, of all the things that you can do for your recovery, you can look at ice baths, compression garments, all sorts of expensive equipment and things. Sleep is arguably the most powerful thing you can do in your recovery, but it also has a benefit of being completely free. So I would highly recommend people to have a look at their sleep levels, and we recommend athletes get at least 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. Are you getting that at the moment? Are you getting 7 to 9 hours a night? If you're not, now's the time to start bringing in strategies to improve your sleep. And as we said, as you increase your training, you want to increase your recovery. So actually, as you approach the peak training miles for your marathon, perhaps coming towards the end of February, March time, try and increase your sleep to improve your recovery. So during that period, you might be aiming for as much as 10 hours of good quality sleep a night. Now, it's easier said than done. We can't always guarantee we're going to get that extra sleep, but there are simple things that you can do that will help. So trying to make sure that you have a set time that you go to bed and get up, so you establish a sleep routine will help. Trying to avoid alcohol, caffeine and nicotine in the time before bed will also help as well. And generally avoiding screen time in the last 2 or 3 hours before bed is important too. So resist the temptation to sit up late at night, looking at your phone, checking your emails. Be winding down ready for sleep during that stage of the evening so that you can get a good night's sleep. Also, if you are sleep deprived, if, like myself, you have a little one at home that likes to wake you up in the middle of the night and early hours of the morning, you can actually compensate by getting a good nap in after lunch. Something around a half an hour nap after lunch can help compensate for sleep deprivation if you're struggling to get some at night. Now, sleep is going to help your recovery, and there's growing evidence it can improve your performance as well. So it's this idea of sleep to win. Use sleep as a really valuable tool to improve your recovery, improve your performance and potentially reduce your risk of getting injured. Okay, and that brings us to our last point on today's recovery video, which is to think about nutrition, think about fueling. Now, you wouldn't jump in your car and go and do a 200-mile journey without making sure you had at least enough fuel on board. And it's a similar thing for our training. We've really got to think about fueling our bodies for the sport that we want to do, making sure we've got enough energy and nutrients on board for the demands of our sport. And for many of you that are training for marathons, you're likely to cover hundreds of miles in the training leading up to your marathon. So you want to fuel for those miles. Now, that can involve making sure you've got a good pre-run fuel strategy, so eating the right things before a run at the right time, and also having a nice post-run fueling routine, so you know what to have when you get in from a run to make sure you take on enough nutrients and rehydrate after a run. Now, everybody's needs and everyone's diets are a little bit different, so we would recommend speaking to our nutritionist, Fran Taylor, who's very experienced in this region, and she can help develop a tailor-made diet for you so you can really optimize your recovery from a nutrition point of view. Now, these are all simple things to get in place now. Hopefully, for many of you, you're going to be in the early stages of your marathon training. This is the right time to fine-tune your recovery strategies, to learn about pre-race fueling, post-race nutrition, getting better sleep, planning things out. This is a time to take advantage of it, because if you get it in place now, it will be with you for the rest of the training program. Now, if you'd like to know more from us in terms of recovery, we've made a nice free download with our top tips for recovery and with the contact details for Sally and for Fran if you want to talk about managing stress and mindfulness, or if you want to speak to Fran about nutrition. And of course, you can come and see me. I'm Tom, or Mike, or Kate, or any of the team that we have here at the physio rooms, and we'll be happy to help you with any injuries, any advice that you want, and we'll keep you back on track, back doing your training, and hopefully on target for that race that's coming up in spring. Okay, that's it from me today at the physio rooms. Hope to catch up with you again next time.